Alright, well, what we're working on here is a 2014 Ford Edge, and I'm going to do some spark plugs on this. And it's a good idea to have it warm but not hot. And the way you go about this is you take the, I don't take the whole air filter housing off, I just take this off, okay? Take that off and just push it to the side right here. Okay, it doesn't need to be all the way off. It's got a vacuum line back there, but I just leave it on. This is the one that's tricky. It has a small tab down here that you need to push. You push that in and rotate it a little bit. That gets it off. Then you take the oil fill cap off, shove it over there, and then this whole cover, kind of a funny clipped on cover here. Take this cover off, it's got some little push-ins. Take this thing off. Where's the other push-in? Yeah, there's another push-in. There's a screw right there. A couple of push-ins, and there's another piece to it in the back. Let me get that screw out of the way. Alright, so I got that thing out. It just goes into one of the valve cover bolts. This little tiny little thing here with a nylon locking thread on there. It's hard all the way out. It's the perfect size to fall in this hole right here. So why don't we plug the hole before I drop it in there. But what you want to do, now we have access to these front three right now. I'm going to go ahead and do these, get them out of the way. You want to get your air blower, okay? Blow all this stuff off, okay? You don't want any dirt or anything falling down in there, because when you pull these off, you'll find that they'll be very nice and clean under there. They have really good gaskets, okay? Once I get all this done here, and pull this back section off, that's going to be a little bit more tricky and hard to get to. We'll check that out when the time comes. We'll remind you to cover up this and put a towel or rag over that air filter assembly so you don't get any dirt in there. I didn't mention that. And you know, just make sure you don't want to blast anything too hard, but just want to just kind of get the loose dust and things off of here. Some of this dust is stuck. It's not that big of a deal. We're not going to try to do a clean on the whole thing, but just like in some of these places where there's debris adds up in the cracks, like right in here. Okay, and like before you pull this assembly out or do any work on it, you want that stuff to be clean. Well, it's the same around each one of these. You want to make sure that there's no dust and debris sitting there waiting to fall in. So then you just got more problems that you don't need. Now, each one of these has a little clip on it that when you clip that little clip up like that, and that releases it, and you just push down on it and wiggle it up, which it's pretty tight. Probably take two hands. This stuff has been on for a while. Alright, so I got it off of there. I just had to wiggle it a little bit, but that's how it goes there. It looks good. I don't see any water in there, any problems. So the other two are just the same way. Alright, so these are the 8mm bolts that come out of these coil packs. They're not captured, okay? They come out all the way. Coil pack pops off pretty easy. Just pop it off. I like to keep them in order so that they don't get mixed up if there's any problems. But that's how things look. You know, you want to look down in there and make sure there's no debris or dust or anything in there. If there is, blow it out, clean it out. Okay, no need to take a spark plug out and letting stuff fall in, right? Alright, so what I have is a 5/8 socket. Okay, got a 5/8 spark plug socket. And I have an extension with a little capture device on there so that it holds that socket. Okay, now there are some better, more tricked out sockets for taking out spark plugs that have like a little ball socket on the end, kind of like these, you know, but it's got a spark plug socket on it. If you don't have either of those, you can do it without it, with just a regular extension. You'll just have to reach in there with some long needle nose or maybe a magnet or something to get it out. It's not a deal breaker. You still can do it without all the fancy tools. Okay, so I got all these plugs pulled out, and I'm looking at my replacement plug here. Kind of get a close-up shot at it if I can, if it'll zoom in. But that's the new one, and these are These are the old ones. You can get a good enough shot at that. But you can see that there's quite a bit of wear on that ground strap part of the electrode there assembly. You can see a lot of wear, so it's a good idea to replace something that looks like this. 100,000 miles is a good time to replace these. These are past that. 131. So that's what they look like. Got quite a bit of wear. You can see the angle on there where one side is worn quite a bit more than the other. That's fine. It still ran good. Had an occasional misfire, but not enough to cause any problems. But for maintenance purposes, I would have done it at 100,000. So there we are. We've got some spark plugs. We've got a Motorcraft SP520A to put in there. And I put a little bit of lubricant on the threads, a little bit of anti-seize, not much. And I tighten them down with my wrench here. I really don't worry about torquing these down any specific way. If you want to do that, you can look it up on your own, but I just do it by feel. And that's how it goes. So let's get on with this and get it done. Alright, well, this is the part where it gets tricky. There's no air tools involved in putting these spark plugs in. Okay? Take them out with whatever you want. Putting them back in, be careful. Now, what I've done is I've just placed each one of them in there and not dropped it. Place it down in there. Okay? Started this one already. And you're going to want to slide your socket in there and kind of wiggle it around and get it centered. And once you get it centered, you hold it in the center and you start to turn it. If you feel any resistance, you need to back out and start over. Okay? Because once you cross thread one of these, you got lots of problems. You don't want that. I normally do this with two hands, so I'm not going to go much further and test anything out. Just be careful putting these back in. Use two hands. Get one hand like this to center it, okay? And use your other hand to just slowly turn it in and get it started properly and straight and not mess it up, okay? Take your time. No air tools. Alright, so this is where we're at. Front ones are all done. I'm taking this intake off, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts here. This bolt is the only one that comes out. It's a really long one. Okay, really long bolt. Alright, now there's the tricky part right there. You follow these pliers down there. I can get the focus on that. At the end of those pliers, there's a bolt there that hooks onto a bracket. Right down there. And so I've got these long needle nose pliers hooked onto them. Let me see if I can light it. Alright, let me light it up a little better. Right on the end of them pliers, there's a bolt there. You can see it pretty good with my eyes, but this camera deal is not. Anyway, there's a bolt there that holds it on a bracket. Right there. And I loosen it up, and then I grab it with these long needle nose pliers and get that out so that so you can get this intake off, because that's holding. All right, so I got the intake off. Takes two hands, and I don't have that with the video. So, but I got it off, and you can see a little easier the bracket. You need to take the bolt out of this bracket, and then we've got one PVC line here that has a just a spring clamp on it. And what I do is I just move that spring clamp back, and I spray some WD-40 in there and wiggle it around. It comes out nice and easy. So here we are here. We've got everything available for us to work on for the coils and the spark plugs in the back. The one thing I didn't go over earlier was you need to disconnect the battery. You need to do that before any of this stuff. I did not mention that, because I did disconnect the wires on the computer to get all these wires out of the way. So this is where we're at. We're just going to pop these little clips up here and take them out just like we did in the front. Put it back together. Let me get you check out the intake manifold here. Alright, so this is the intake manifold. This is what it looks like when it comes out. This is the hose in the back, and that's where that little bracket goes, right there. But that's what it looks like. It's got an O-ring style gasket on it. Just going to pop that gasket off, put a new one on there, and that's it. Just be careful with it, it's plastic. This is the gasket that I got. It's a Felpro MS 97118-1. Hadn't took it out and checked it yet, but I think this comes with the upper and the lower intake gasket, and we don't need the lower one because we're not taking that off. The lower one has the injectors and all that junk in there, and we don't need to take all that stuff off, okay? All right, so just leave that on. This is one of the most important things you can do right here, is to tape this off. This is where the intake runners are, and I do that immediately. If something falls in there, you're going to be having a really bad day, so we don't want to do that. Tape them guys up. Now on these coil packs, what I do is clean this edge off around here if it's got any dirt or anything in there, and I get some of this dielectric grease right here, and I just put a little glob on the inside of that lip there, and I put some on the end, and whenever I stick it down in the hole with the spark plug, I kind of wiggle it and move it around a little bit and spread that silicone all out. And that helps keep some moisture out and makes it so you can take it apart one day, hopefully. So that's how it is. That's all I'm going to show for the spark plugs. I don't see any major issues or problems. I think one thing I didn't show is I went ahead and took that air box off, which if you shoot some WD-40 on that from the inside, it comes out real easy. And I did not show this connector here. It has a, it goes to the intake manifold right there by the throttle body. It goes about, if you look at it, this little clip goes on the side of the throttle body right here. It's really hard to get out. But this thing here, this little plastic clip is pointing down and you can't see it. You can see the top of it. Let me see if I can put it in there. When you look at it, you can only see that. And so what you have to do is just pop these two little ends off with a pick. Get me a pick right here. Just pop these two little ends off with this pick like that, and go around the other side like this, and dig that little guy out and get it popped out. Get it popped out enough so that you can get in there with your needle nose pliers and grab that little clip like this and pull it out. And you'll have it in your needle nose pliers. Sorry, I did not show that, but that's really the only thing that I saw that was tricky about that, is this little hose right here that goes onto the throttle body. Everything else is pretty intuitive. I might have taken off more than I should have, but that's fine. Make sure you get things out of the way so that you can work and do the job easily. I did pull one water line off, okay, and water shot out. So just when you do things like that, it's antifreeze. You'll have to check your antifreeze and put a pan under it and catch that excess antifreeze so that it doesn't go on the ground. Yeah, I think this is the hose right here. Wherever it is, I put it, yep, here it is. This is the water line hose. I just kind of tucked it away, but you don't want to lay it down too low. If it has antifreeze in it, it'll start draining out. So it's labeled and marked on the end where it's supposed to go, but this is it right here. It's not that big of a deal. I wanted it out of the way. I didn't want to mess around with it. It would have went right here with this hose here, okay? And all that comes out. These little things here are really hard to get out. There's like a little plastic ledge that goes on the upper intake. You just have to be real careful when you get these out. They're just basically destroyed when you get them out. But I don't know what to do about that besides getting new ones at the Ford place. And I don't think that guy wants to do that. So, but anyway, let me get this thing wrapped up here and see how it goes.